Wait for it, and we're live. Hey, all you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans, it's time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. Just a couple of nerdy veterans geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies. A place where magic is king, the sky is the limit, and space is the place. We are the podcast that puts the fun into function. And because I said that out of habit without actually reading the script, I forgot to tell you we had a chaos coordinator on crew as well, and she will stab Nick for my mistake. So, oops.
That'll be the third time this week.
It happens, but you like it. You married her, so you're stuck with her.
That's true. I heal quickly, apparently.
Yeah, I can see that. All right, so first we're going to let our guests introduce themselves to our viewing and listening audiences at home, and we're going to start with Mr. Garrett K. Jones. Finally, a name I can pronounce. I like it.
Yeah. I give my name at Starbucks, and they're like, "Okay, Gary." No,
no, you're missing some letters there, sweet C.
Yeah,
actually, it's pronounced Barat.
I actually got to the point a few years ago where I would give them like the most ridiculous things, so they had to say it out loud.
Got a friend that does that.
It was awesome. It was a lot of fun. They would actually have to call out Batman, and So I guess the thing about me is I'm an author, indie author. I write fantasy. I have 5 books out in a current ongoing series called The Archives of the Sink Ran. Book 5 just actually celebrated its 1-year anniversary yesterday. So I'm doing a special promo that I'm knocking $5 off the cost of each of the books if they're bought directly from me. I'm not going to control anything on Amazon because Amazon takes a huge cut as it is. So yeah, so normally the books run $15 each. You get a signed copy, but this up through Leap Day, you get them for $10 each.
Nice.
Yeah. And then beyond that, I host a couple of different podcasts simultaneously. I do one on YouTube called The Right Way, and where I do author interviews. I bring on guest hosts to do top 10 book recommendations. And then I do creative writing tips because my background is in creative writing. And then I also co-host a Star Wars podcast called War of the Stars, which airs weekly on the Geek News Now network. That's what I was recording before I jumped on here. We're doing a for this week's episode. It's actually for the 5th anniversary of the Star Wars podcast day. And so like now there's something like 90 plus podcasts all focusing on Star Wars. And so it comes up as the anniversary of the first Star Wars podcast airing in 1999. And then, so for our special episode, we actually had, we were doing a fan cast of the OG Thrawn trilogy written by Timothy Zahn. And then the other podcast that I host is one that's a little bit more near and dear to my heart. And that one's called Storytellers. And it's talking about my healing journey, working through the last few years of going through and finalizing a divorce.
Okay. So when I go to Starbucks and I really want to confuse them, I just tell them Publius Cornelius Scipio Africanus the Elder, and then I make them spell it and pronounce it right. I'm not so mean as I make them say it in the ancient Roman, Latin, if you were. But,
hey, but that's a good gladiator reference.
He's also the guy that beat Hannibal at Carthage. So,
right, that's where I'm getting the gladiator reference because they reenact that fight.
Oh, that's right, they did. I forgot about that. Got to watch the movie again. We should do a review, Nick. We don't have other things to do.
Oh yeah, I forgot.
I'm a movie
buff. Okay, and then next we have the lovely Mr. JT. I'm sorry, I was coughing. What's your last name again?
Yeah, it's JT Arail.
So can you introduce yourself, JT?
Hey, I'm a science fiction, fantasy, and horror author. Currently writing a lot of short stories and working on a couple novels. Novels are pretty far out, though, on being finished. But, just keeping at it.
So he's the oracle for all things Halo and Destiny, as we've discovered.
We have. Those episodes will be airing after this one, guys. And we're going to have him back when we do some of the, what was it? Forward Unto Dawn, I think, was the movie we were going to do a review of.
Yeah.
Great movie. It is
Yeah,
a
great
love that
movie.
movie. So he's been on before, but this will air first. So this is your first time meeting him. He is awesome. We can't pronounce his last name, but that's okay. We like him anyway. I found.
If I was going to pronounce it in Spanish, there's so many things going on in his last name, it would sound completely different. Because you got the double R's, which means you got to roll them, and then you got the two L's, which comes out as like a Y.
I'm not.
Araye.
We're just going to move on. And so the next part of the introduction, dear listeners, how we found them. I found JT on the Three Ravens Discord because, if you've listened to previous episodes, we've affiliated with them. And then I found Garrett when I was live tweeting, watching these 10 episodes for this review. And I was just commenting as I was watching. And then he started joining the chat with me, commenting back and forth. I'm like, you should just come on the show with us. And then we found out he was an author and sci-fi nerd and likes Star Wars. And I'm like, Nick, your people.
Welcome to the shit show.
When I told Nick you were coming, he's like, grumble. I don't know if we want new people. This is supposed to just be a chill episode. I'm like, he's a Star Wars fan. He's like, okay, we're okay.
Oh, he's a Star Wars guy? All right. Yeah, he's cool.
Stamp
his nerd card right now. Boom, good to go.
All right, Garrett, because you have not been on this show before, JT, you've answered them already. They'll have to wait for future episodes to listen to them. But Garrett, the religion question: Star Wars, Star Trek, or Firefly?
I like all three. I lean more heavily towards Star Wars because it was just my thing growing up because it's a nice blend of space and fantasy. I grew up reading Arthurian legend, and it's derived pretty much, shot for shot out of King Arthur. But I'm also a big browncoat. I love Firefly. One year for Halloween, I went dressed as Jane Cobb, complete with his actual cunning cap.
Nice. Is it?
Yes.
Oh, I've got like 3 or 4. Well, I think JT also has 3 or 4 Blue Sun shirts. I know I have
I've got
2.
Yeah.
Time for some.
I do like Star Trek. I grew up on The Next Generation and DS9. And one year for Halloween, I went as Wesley Crusher. No one got the reference, but okay, cool.
Shut up, Wesley.
You just wanted everyone to hate you?
Well, everybody hates him now. That's because of the actor.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, I don't know. Was the "Shut Up, Wesley" a thing?
And really, in the show, it was Picard that hated him because he kept telling him to shut up.
Yeah. Because he was a 14-year-old kid on the bridge, and I have a 14-year-old stepson that, shut up, Caden. Because they'll talk all day long if you let them about nonsense.
I've been a teacher. I can attest to this.
He has to tell us what we all just saw on the movie.
Oh, the best is when we make reference to something we saw in the movie 5 minutes later, delayed fuse. He's like, hey, did you guys notice about 5 minutes ago that it's like, dude, we were just talking about that. Where were you?
My favorite is when the kids ask you the questions and you're like, if you wait 5 seconds, they're about to answer that for you.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I just tell him maybe it'll further the plot because I don't want to answer his questions.
All right.
And watch the movie.
Shut up. Watch the movie.
All right, and this is why they'll never take the sky from us. And because we are polytheistic over here at the Blasters Blades podcast, Game of Thrones, Wheel of Time, or Chronicles of Narnia?
I grew up with Chronicles of Narnia, mostly Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. But I do like Game of Thrones as a series. I've never read the books. And at this point, I'm probably not going to, since George R.R. Martin's going to eat himself into a coma before that ever happens. And it's not like you can finish the books and do anything different than what's already been done because, he's already screwed the pooch on that one. But I am also a big fan of Tolkien. I know it's not on the list.
Used to be.
But I love The Hobbit. I think it was a great book. I couldn't get past the first chapter of Fellowship of the Ring, though. So one of my best friends, who is I call him my Tolkien scholar, he, that's one thing he holds against me. But the funny thing is I don't read much fantasy. for as much as I write it, just because I don't want to borrow from other people. So that's just kind of how I'm wired.
So
Yeah,
we used to have it as the religion question against Game of Thrones and Wheel of Time, but it's just unfair to any other property to put Tolkien in the same breath. So we just stopped doing it when everyone was started answering it. I mean, it becomes so predictable that you had to mix it up.
Lord of the Rings.
Well,
Lord
and
of the
then
Rings, Lord of the Rings,
we
Lord of
add
the
the caveat like, well, if you don't like any of those three, you can come up with option D, and the option D always goes back to Tolkien.
Yeah.
Everyone goes back to Lord of the Rings. So it's like,
I will say though,
there
there is a fantasy series that I do like. It's written by Jonathan Stroud. It's called the Bartimaeus series. There's 3 books in a trilogy that take place in modern day, and it's kind of an urban fantasy. But the 4th book in the series actually serves as a prequel, and it's called The Ring of Solomon. It takes place during the last few months or years of King Solomon's reign over Israel. Before Israel split up into 2 kingdoms, and Bartimaeus is this 4th level genie that is a key character through all 4 books. And so, like, the characters that are followed that are human, all their narrative is done in 3rd person omniscient, whereas when you start following the chapters from Bartimaeus' perspective, everything's done in 1st person, and there's all these little quips and asides done as footnotes in the book, because there are things that he can't get to in the actual narrative. And it's really funny. He's really a cheeky character, and I mean, there's a lot of Britishisms and humor to it, very dry, but it's so well written.
Okay.
I could dig that.
We can accept that as an answer. All right. And
money on books.
because we are civilized human beings here now, we are well past our knuckle dragging days. Coffee or tea, and how do you take it?
I'm mostly a tea drinker. If I'm gonna drink it, usually it's with honey, maybe a little bit of lemon juice, nothing else. I don't put sugar in it. I unfortunately, like, I've spent time living in the South, and I don't understand how they can do that to their tea. As far as coffee, though, I will put copious amounts of things in there to make it taste as much like a milkshake as possible.
Okay. I'm pretty much 50-50 creamer and coffee, but I make my coffee extra strong to compensate. And maybe one day when I grow up, I'll drink it black.
I can't drink it black.
We happen to know a company that makes special flavored coffees that taste like milkshake.
And all kinds of other great things.
Tell us about this coffee.
It's called Coffee Brand Coffee. So they just released a coffee called Strawberries and Cream.
I don't know about that one.
All you gotta do is use the link below in the comment or the code podcast grunts, and they will hook you up. Get 10% off.
That's right. It's 10%.
Yeah,
I couldn't remember if it was 5 or 10.
At this point,
They
we
also
just
have
use the code.
teas and hot cocos
Yeah.
Yes, they also have teas and hot cocos now.
and snacks.
And swag. I got all kinds of swag.
But I love the sticky pecan roll coffee, the blueberry crumble coffee. It is super good. I love that one. That's my favorite.
Obviously, I like the bourbon coffee.
The bourbon flavored coffee.
Yeah, I had their double caffeinated one.
I actually had a friend of mine provide me with a bag of coffee that she picked up in Nicaragua, and
Nice.
It is amazing. Like, it is so darn good. Like, I have brewed it up. It's been a while. It's been sitting in my cupboards for a couple months. I had to cut back because of the amount of caffeine I was getting, and it tasted so good.
All right. So with that out of the way, we've duly shilled for the affiliate sponsor that helps keep the lights on with us, and we appreciate every time you use the code. It kicks a little something back. And so far, we're up to 4 episodes paid for. through that affiliate program. So we appreciate that. My wallet appreciates that because otherwise I back the fees to run the podcast. And given what I pay for the StreamYard's membership and the editing software, running multiple podcasts, well, I guess you've already spent the money. What's a few more shows? But still, that's dedication right there. Because most podcasts don't make money. There would not that many Joe Rogans out there. Most of us, it's just a labor of love.
No, I got this one and Drawing with Nick, which is the most clever name ever.
I would like to think so. I mean, you gave yourself a really nice name. It was noble. It was, it pops. I like it. You should really commend your mom for picking it for you.
Oh, yeah, because she was a big fan of 8 is Enough, and that's what I was named after. I was named Nicholas after that character.
Okay.
But you guys aren't allowed to call him that.
Good to know. Is that like calling him Francis? Lighten up, Francis.
The name's Chainsaw.
All right. So next we're going to introduce the movie. Well, not really a movie, the television series review that we're doing. So it is Monarch, Legacy of Monsters is an American monster television series created by Chris Black and Matt Fraction, based on Godzilla by Toho Company Limited. It is the 6th installment and the 2nd television series in the MonsterVerse franchise, following the events of Godzilla in 2014. The 10-episode series follows members of the Monarch organization as they encounter Godzilla and other monsters called Titans across a half-century, which I think is a pretty good summary for it. I stole it from the Wikipedia page. The links will be in the show notes for everything we reference, so you can check it out yourself. When we dive into this TV show, we are going to look at the blurb, basically the movie summary. We're going to talk about the movie trailer. We're going to talk about the characters, the plot, the world building, the cinematography. We're going to show you that glorious movie poster, and then we're going to go overall what we thought about it. So the summary details, it's obviously Monarch, a Legacy of Monsters. It is directed by Chris Black and Matt Fraction. It costs $10 a month for Apple TV. It's all out. Season 1 is all out now. So $10, 1 month subscription, and you've watched it. Each episode's about an hour long. I think they were 50 minutes, I think.
Yeah, like 50 to 58 minutes on some of them are 58 minutes. But yeah, it's usually around an hour. Just count for an hour. And you're probably gonna watch the whole damn thing in a day. You're gonna find a Saturday, you're gonna throw it on there, and then you're in.
So I started at like 9 o'clock. I messaged Nick. I said, how many of these episodes are we watching? And he goes, well, we watched all of them, but at least the first one. So I started the first one, and I'm like, son of a bitch, I'm hooked. And 5 o'clock in the morning, when I finished watching all 10 hours of this, I live tweeted it as we went, which is how I found, like I said, how we found Garrett, because he started responding. And I guess you also do not sleep, sir.
I sleep from time to time when I'm allowed.
Fair. And so the first episode released on November 17th, 2023 in the US. I'm not sure because data wasn't available about where and when it released elsewhere in the world. The ad cover, and we're going to discuss, it says, about the world-shattering revelation that monsters are real, the world-shattering revelation that monsters are real, 2 siblings follow in their father's footsteps to uncover their family's connection to the secretive organization known as Monarch. So we're going to ask everybody, did you think the summary that they put out for their show worked? Is it pretty spot on?
Yeah, I think they should have added that in, because it really follows the beginning of Monarch. So there's a lot of time splitting, which I didn't know when I first got into it, because it said it was like, it's going to take place right around 2015 when the first Godzilla movie came out. I'm like, all right, cool. And it has Kurt Russell in it. So obviously I'm in. And it kept going back and forth in time. And I'm like, wait a minute, am I missing something? Wait. So I think they should have added that it goes through the history of Monarch while also showing present day.
I think having something, indicating that there is some level of generational jumps would be helpful, because ultimately that's what it is. It's a generational show where you're seeing that time gap. But I think overall the description's fairly apt, because you do have the 2 siblings who are trying to figure out. They're not really following their dad's like job footsteps so much as like the path that he has been on, just to kind of figure, following the clues of where he last was is more of anything than else.
Kate's definitely following a behavioral genetic path.
I think they could have just said Godzilla. Because I'm sorry, that's all Nick told me about it. He goes, it's Godzilla.
I should really write copy for, descriptions of movies.
Well, that's all you told me.
I had that long listing that you read off, JR, and then I'm like, to sell it, I was like, Godzilla.
He goes, we're going to watch the show. And I was like, okay, what's it about? And he goes, Godzilla. I was like, son of a bitch, I'm in.
She turned into Morty from Rick and Morty real quick. You son of a bitch, I'm in.
So the one thing I liked, I remember watching it and thinking that the Colonel Shaw character, which was played by, what was the guy's name? You just told me a second ago.
Kurt Russell.
And I'm like, man, they really found a guy that looks like Kurt Russell to play him when he was younger. And then somebody
reads the cast and it's his son.
And they're like, yeah, that's his son. I'm like, oh shit. Okay. No wonder the family resemblance was true.
What's his name?
Yeah, they did a really good job on that casting.
Yeah, that was worked for me.
That was a no-brainer though.
Sometimes when they show like somebody when they, the older and younger version, you're like, without CGI, this isn't working for me. This was not one of those cases, but they didn't have to CGI, it turns out.
Well, it'd be like if they wanted to cast a young Luke Skywalker presently, you could get Sebastian Shaw, who looks just like...
You mean Sebastian Stan?
I mean Sebastian Shaw. That's X-Men. Sorry. My geekdoms are getting crossed. But yeah, Sebastian Stan, he could totally play a young Luke Skywalker with no CGI whatsoever. I mean...
he's pretty much a dead ringer.
Yeah.
All right, Nick, can you show the trailer so we can dive in?
My pleasure, sir. Hold on, let me go to that tab. All right, y'all ready? Here we go.
The world is on fire.
Monarch was there in San Francisco. When the whole city was coming down, these guys were taking pictures, like they'd been waiting for it.
You think that your father was working for them?
This stuff was in a safe.
Who are they? What's Monarch?
This is the world we live in. Monsters are an inescapable reality.
Those files belong to us, and they are more important than you could possibly imagine.
This is going to give me nightmares. Now, you can choke down that Monarch lie. What about your father disappearing? Or we can find out what really happened before it's too late.
Oh my God, go!
This world, it's not ours. Believe me.
It is so much more vast than we could possibly imagine.
These monsters and Monarch have taken everything from me. No more.
The world is on fire. If you want to save millions of lives, we can use some help.
That was a lovely trailer. So did that sell everybody? Would it made you watch it?
Oh, absolutely.
Me too. Most of the time we do these reviews, I haven't seen the trailers before we watch the show. We tend to watch it after the fact because we just decide what we're going to watch as a group and go for it. But if I had seen that, I definitely want to watch it. And I'm not normally a monster guy.
Well, and that's how I got onto the show, because I had seen it pop up on Apple TV, and I watched the trailer probably a dozen different times to kind of like weigh whether I wanted to get invested in another show. Yeah, it was probably about the 12th time I was like, you know what? I'm getting into it. Let's do this. And I talked to Stabby about it, and it was an easy sell because we had just got finished watching Godzilla, King of Monsters, Kong, Skull Island, and then Godzilla versus Kong. And all I had to say was, it's got Godzilla in it. She's like, you son of a bitch, I'm in.
I will say that as somebody who hasn't seen any of those other movies, you don't need to have seen the rest of the MonsterVerse to follow this series. I mean, everyone's tangentially aware of Godzilla versus King Kong. Like, that's become such common in the zeitgeist that you just as a surface level understanding of all that, and you're good. I don't think you have to have watched the other movies. Yeah,
and they do a pretty good job explaining about what Monarch is, how it began, and what it becomes later on. You know, by the time you get to that Godzilla movie in 2014.
Yeah, I think. I mean, it works very well as a standalone series, apart from the rest of the films, especially considering the fact that it's only tangentially produced by Legendary. Like they've got, you know, ownership rights for this version of Godzilla and all the monsters therein. But as far as like the distribution throughout the worldwide beyond Toei, but it works so well because while there are references, it is like it does very well on its own.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And even if it gives a reference where most people like under the idea that not everybody has seen all those films, which was a smart play on their half, they'll show. I think there was a couple of like callback footage from those movies of what was going on with the references.
Those scenes were from the other movies. I didn't catch that.
Some of them were, yeah.
Yeah, some of the stuff that was on the Golden Gate Bridge, that was from the 2014 film. The references to Apex, and the cybernetic biohacking and all that, that's references back to Godzilla versus Kong. And just all these other organizations that pop up throughout the franchise. I mean, it's obviously the opening with John Goodman is a callback to Kong Skull Island. So it's all very nuanced and done well without retconning anything that's already been established in the canon of this franchise.
Yeah.
So was the character Kate, was she shown in the movie and then they just pulled that actress and said, let's make a movie with you?
No, the focus on the 2014 film was on like 3 different characters.
Okay.
Yeah.
My favorite, speaking of the original, the G-Day, so the Tokyo and the San Francisco, is when Kate lands in Tokyo and she's talking to her Lyft driver, taxi driver, whatever. And he's like, I have a podcast. And he's talking about how the one in San Francisco was a government conspiracy. And he's got like a conspiracy theory podcast. And I'm like, yeah, that tracks human nature. Yeah, I've talked to a guy that was involved in the moon landing. He spoke at RavenCon, and I asked him how soon after that event happened where the conspiracy theory starting. He's like, yeah, as soon as I got home, my mother-in-law called and asked how we faked it. So there's always going to be, those people like, that's not real.
There's always going to be that guy.
Yeah.
So, I one of the things I liked very much about how they went about the production of this was just the casting that went into it. Like Anders Holm, I mean, the only time I've ever seen him do anything is the stuff from like the Workaholics. And so, and he did like one guest appearance, I think, on I want to say it was Big Bang Theory, but it was some sitcom. But that's what he's known for is the sitcom stuff, and having him play a more serious character is really great because I abide wholly by the philosophy that you're going to get your best dramatic performances from comedic actors because they're really great on turning on a dime and being able to ad lib and improvise a scene so much faster than your dramatic performers.
Okay, yeah, I can agree with that. So, so let's talk about the characters. Who do you guys see the main characters as? Garrett, you want to go first?
Sure. Obviously, Kate and Kentaro are definitely primary characters because it's their dad that they're trying to trace down and find out. But Lee Shaw he's a predominant character throughout because he's kind of the linchpin for the whole thing because he's been there to see both sides of everything that Monarch has been doing.
Yeah, he'd been there since the beginning. I think it's fair to say that there's like two groups because of the time jumps. You have two groups of main characters. You have Gieko, you have Lee. What was the other guy's name?
Will Randa.
Will. So those are your three main characters in the 50s, 60s, all the past stuff about forming Monarch and the pursuit of the Titans and the pursuit of Godzilla. And then you have, Kate and her brother as well, and May as like the modern, well, not technically modern day, but the 2015 or current as it's set in the universe. Those are your main characters, and I like how they broke it up because a lot of times when you have time jumps or going back and forth through time, they tend to focus on one time stream than the other as far as main characters. So I think the show has done that amazingly well, splitting it up. You knew if it said anything in the 1950s or 60s, who your main characters were going to be, and
so
and then when
I had it as
well. There's also what I. Oh, go ahead, JR.
I had Kate, May, and Kentaro together, and then I had Kato, Randa, and Shaw like the past, and then I kind of put Hirohito, the son, because he was sort of bridging the gap. I mean, Colonel Shaw did too, but not as intricately on an individual like main character level. So I kind of put him as an other, even though I still think he's a main character. So what about you were saying, Garrett?
I was going to say one of the things that they do well, especially in the cinematography, is the lensing that they do as far as the chromatics. Because like if you look at the modern day, everything's darker, it's bleaker. There's kind of a bluish gray tint to everything. Whereas you look at the scenes from the 1950s and 1960s, there's a warmer atmosphere. There's a lot more greens and yellows and oranges involved in the how everything is filmed. It's very bright, like it's the
very
idea
technical.
And so like you get this juxtaposition of color of this is how bright our future is, this is how bleak it's become.
I didn't catch the color, but I'm also colorblind, so that went right over my head.
I caught that early on, and I agree with Garrett. The juxtaposition actually adds to color being a storytelling element, because it showed the bright future that it wanted to be in the 50s and 60s as far as the color palettes that they used and how it was filmed. And then you get to these muted, darker colors in 2015 when they show that. So like anything using a visual medium, you try and work every aspect you can, not only, the storytelling, the writing, how it's shot or how it's drawn, but also the color plays a huge role in that. And we see that in the series, and I think it was very well done.
I will say most, unless you're trained to specifically analyze movies, most people won't notice that kind of stuff. They'll just watch it and it'll feel a way to them. You don't notice a lot of that until you start looking for it.
I got trained in doing comics, which is not much different. It's a paper medium as opposed to film. It's just a different type of material that you're printing your stuff on. So learning how to tell stories from a visual medium definitely trains you on how to look for those sorts of things like color palettes, and tones and shades and hints and hues and all that, and how it can be used to differentiate past, future, present, and it can tell their own individual stories within. This is why I brought me on the show, JR, the artsy fartsy stuff.
All right. Speaking of bringing people on the show, JT, what do you think of the characters?
So I think you're right with the breakouts between, the 40s through 60s group, and then you have the modern group. Unfortunately, the modern group, I think they were having trouble figuring out where to kind of put May into the story more. So she felt in most of the episodes like a third wheel until the last two, where they're bringing in her former employer as a partner, and they're really trying to tie her tighter into the story, I think. As far as like the older stuff, there's going to be some interesting things with some character revelations there that I think are going to be pretty interesting coming up.
So before we let Stabby jump in and share her thoughts, I will say we will try not to do spoilers, but no promises, because we're really excited. We all really like this show. So if it happens, oops.
Hashtag kaijus.
All right, Stabby, what do you think of the characters?
So I think you're all kind of right. We have the younger generation, the more current generation. We have the 40s through 60s generation. But I think that Shaw and Hiroshi, the dad of,
was it Hiroshi or Hirohito?
Hiroshi.
I wrote it down wrong.
But I think those two are kind of your gap jumpers. They're connecting the older group and the newer group. Shaw, because he was there at the beginning. He was with Kaiko at the beginning of Monarch and everything, and with Bill Randa and everything, and he was there through all of that. But then there's that time jump where he went into the other dimension and he came back and he was in the 80s. So you have that time jump from when Hiroshi was a little boy and he was leaving him, saying goodbye, leaving his pocket knife with him, to being in the 80s, where now Hiroshi is, in his 20s, 30s, and he's like, it's me, Uncle Lee, it's me. And then there's the next time jump where Lee is with the younger group at the retirement home, making the great escape. So, and then, the younger group is only there because of Hiroshi. So, because they're trying to figure out what happened to Dad. So I think it takes Lee and Hiroshi to connect everything, because the three younger ones wouldn't even be on this mission if it weren't for the fact that their dad was gone. They wouldn't know nothing about Monarch if outside of, Godzilla. They wouldn't be on this massive going around the world, winding up in an ice cave here and the desert there, if it weren't for the fact that they were trying to figure out what happened to Dad. So I think it's both of them.
Given all of the travel they did in this series, I shudder to think what their budget must have been. And I have to think that's going to affect whether there's a season 2 or not.
There is. They confirmed it.
Okay.
There is going to be season 2. What's interesting, though, is there's a lot of places where you can film where it's going to look like other places. I mean, they, especially for the stuff in the South Pacific, while it was supposed to look like parts of Japan or the Philippines or whatever, they were actually just filming in Hawaii. So any of that can be done very easily. The stuff in the desert, that's going to be harder to do because you actually have to find a place with decent sand dunes. But if they did film on location, that would, like, my hat's off to you, because it's a good use of your resources to do so. Because everything else, I mean, can either be shot on a soundstage or can be shot in a fairly generic location that looks similar to what you're doing.
Yeah, for the desert stuff, I mean, we were watching Resident Evil Extinction, and that's supposed to be in Nevada, and they don't have dunes like that in Nevada that I've ever seen. So
yes, they do.
Okay. I just haven't seen them. But California, they use a lot of those. Like Glamis has huge sand dunes. And then an hour and a half away, you can go to Big Bear where they have mountains and snow. So, yeah, the location stuff, I think they just went to some pretty close places they could use for that filming. I'd have to look it up. Someone's probably going to, if you're going to be wrong on the internet, someone's going to correct you and give you the proper
Be sure to put it in the comment section, and it'll help the algorithm.
Right.
So win-win. So we've talked about who we thought the main characters were, but let's talk about what we thought of them. I would say of the modern characters, the 2015 characters, I liked the siblings, the way their dynamic evolved over time, and shifted back and forth in some respects on who was the reluctant sibling and who wanted to find out more. I like that. I do feel like JT said, May felt stiff in the beginning. Hiroshi was definitely a cad. He was very hard to like, that character, and I think that's probably intentional. And then the subtle love triangle with Kaito was definitely understated to the point where when you found out later who she married, it's like, wait, what? Because that kind of came out of nowhere, it felt like. But overall, I felt like, with the exception of May, all the characters were very likable. I mean, well, obviously not Hiroshi, but you can't have two wives and, hide them from each other. I mean, we're not even talking about like consensual polygamy here. Like, we're talking a wife in every port kind of thing. I wonder if season 2, the revelation is going to be yet another Randall family.
Yeah, some man, he's acting like a sailor. He's got a family in every port he goes to. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that happens in the second season, that you find some third group of siblings, some third family.
Like, well, let's see. I mean, he's a world traveler, so what if he just has one on every continent?
Could be.
Holy cow, how much is Monarch paying him that he can support a family in San Francisco at these pay stub requirements, and one in Tokyo? I mean, we're not talking cheap places to live.
Well, if he's as technical as he appeared to be, it's super easy for him to probably sell some patents or something. Who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what did
patent money?
Yeah. What did everyone else think of the characters?
I mean, I thought the characters were well written. I mean, JR, I think I was talking with you on X the other day, and I thought that the casting of both Wyatt and Kurt Russell was super inspired, just simply because, I mean, who better than to use an older actor's son to play a younger version of him, playing the same character. They've got the same mannerisms, same vocal tones, and sure, they probably spent some time working out the details of that as actors. But I mean, when you're around someone long enough, your cadences and your humor, your body language, it all mirrors, who you're supposed to be imitating very easily. I mean, there are times where, like, I'll be saying something or doing something, and I'll be talking with someone, and all of a sudden I realize, oh my God, this is something my dad would have done or said. So these are natural things that pop up, but beyond that, like the way that they filmed and staged their performances was brilliant. Because was anyone else like just in awe of the scene where Kurt Russell is in holding, the deputy director comes talking to him while they're playing that film strip on the back of the wall, and he stands up into the same alignment with Wyatt Russell's face, and they're just superimposed on each other.
I caught
brilliant
that.
Cinematography. I'm like, whoa,
that was really awesome. It was well done.
Do you think that was on purpose or just accidental?
Oh, absolutely. It was definitely
absolutely on purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're trying to tie them together.
So it was. I think the characters were well done. Oh, buddy, that's my son. Do that.
You're okay.
Speaking of Godzilla fans, he's like the ultimate. Like, he knows everything. He just hasn't watched the show yet because it's above his pay grade. But yeah, no, the characters were great. I do think May she felt like a third wheel. I think JT was right on that one. And I feel like the background stuff, while it works story-wise, especially because it sets up the stuff for Apex in what we know of in Godzilla versus Kong, there's a part of it that I wish they had been dropping a little bit more on the hints and like the subtle nods to this way sooner. I mean, the reveal becomes pretty slamming once you see it on screen, but you know, getting a little bit more of that background from her sooner would have been great.
So, as someone who follows the visual mediums, was anything they were saying when they were meeting with May's family, and we won't reveal the name, but when they were meeting with her family and they're talking about she's a manga fan, and they just start throwing out Japanese words, was that as gibberish as it felt like watching it? Because the translator for the subtitles was hit or miss on Apple TV. So sometimes it would translate for me, sometimes it
I don't
wasn't.
speak a lick of Japanese, so I just roll with it. I always go with maybe it'll further the plot.
I lived over there for a year, so I'm familiar with some of that stuff, but I don't watch manga or read manga or watch anime that much. So they could have given out titles and I would have been none the wiser.
But what I enjoyed about that part was just how naturally it rolled out of Tim's mouth. Like, he's an actual fan.
Or at least he speaks the language, because if that was gibberish, like, it was well done.
I mean, by his own admission, he is a basement dweller.
True. Speaking of, what is your thoughts on the characters, JT, since you're speaking? And then we'll let Nick and Stabby jump in.
Yeah, for the most part, they were well done. There's a couple that I would have liked to have seen them kind of delve a little bit more into the history on. So, the Korean guy that they go to meet up with and they get on the plane with, that I wanted to know more about that relationship. I also agree with Garrett on the kind of foreshadowing of the Apex connection, because I'm coming into this not having seen the previous movies. I've just watched the show, and I had no idea what that was when it showed up on the screen. What was it, 8 episodes in?
Yeah.
So that kind of was a curveball that I had no idea what it was or what the connection is. I'm sure they're going to develop it more later, but it would have been nice to see more of that beforehand.
Okay. What about you, Stabby, Nick? What do you guys think of the characters?
As we try to decide who's going to answer first. I think my favorite part about it is they left it open enough where they can build on the characters. It's not, they're dead set in this one specific way of being. There's room to grow with them. I also think that, they gave them all brains. I really like that. Like, you don't have just some weak little side piece running around going, oh my God, what do I do? Being a Mary Sue, they're all pretty tough. They all have brains. They can all keep up with the conversation. And I really enjoyed that a lot. Because, if May was running behind him going, wait for me, I think I would have been really upset about that. But yeah, I just like the fact that they picked great actors. They put them into their characters very well, and they left them room to grow.
Yeah, I will say, as far as the characters go, this doesn't feel like one of those movies where it's like, okay, you can see what boxes they're looking to check from a casting perspective. Everything in there, it just felt natural for the movie. It worked. So, what about you, Nick? Thoughts on the characters?
No, I think everyone's already kind of expressed that the characters, they were well casted, who they wanted to play these roles, and they did well. I do agree that May felt kind of like a third wheel, and that maybe they could have put more of her backstory earlier in the series as opposed to later, just to kind of give that anticipation, for everybody. That there's some things in there that they put in there for someone who has probably never seen any of the movies to just jump right in. But there was a lot of stuff in there for guys, or for people like me, that love monsters, love kaijus, big fan of like Pacific Rim, Ultraman, the old Godzilla stuff. So there's stuff that's put in for everybody. But I think with May, you could have probably done that a little bit earlier, and that's fine. That was probably an editing choice. I don't know why. Maybe, like I said, it'll further the plot in season 2. Who knows? But there are some relationships like the Korean guy that
Duho.
what was his name?
Duho.
Duho. I would like to see that relationship, how that began, how that connection was made. But I don't think it's absolutely necessary for you to enjoy it either. So
yeah. I think probably one of the I think the character that I liked most, aside from the main ones, was Tim, played by Tibbet. I like this guy. Like the thing I liked about him is that he was a true believer in what Monarch was meant to be, and like I feel like he was kind of like the conscience for all the higher ups, because you had Verdugo, who was trying to just rein everything in. You had Duvall, who we get like the impact for us on that one is that, like, if you've seen the films, her sister was played by Juliette Binoche in the opening of the 2014 film. So she's got some personal stakes, but like Tim as a character, he is the conscience for everything. He's just trying to put the pieces together, trying to make sure that things are working the way they're supposed to work, and trying to make sure that people don't make mistakes. And I think it was kind of cool that he is the character that survives the helicopter crash in the desert. I'm not going to give away what causes that, because we said
we have a clip. We have a clip.
Well, before we do that, does anybody else? I liked Tim as the secondary character and the French chick that he was with in the beginning. Yeah, she didn't say much. She was kind of the strong, silent type, but they didn't show her as unbeatable. I mean, it was Kate with no training, former school teacher, that caused the wreck and basically kicked her backside with a surprise left kick or whatever. So like, she's not someone who's Mary Sue or whatever, but she did a good job for the tough guy character. But what about you, JT and Stabby and Nick? What were your favorite secondary characters?
Man, I think you're right on with that one. Introducing a kind of a femme fatale character, I think, is always cool. Because the intentions were not known in the beginning.
I'm gonna go.
Man.
Oh, go ahead, Nick.
No. I'm finished. I'm rambling at this point.
I'm gonna go with Tim. I really liked him. He was like you said, he really believes in the core mission, what they really should be doing, and where you had Verdugo, who definitely looked like one of those corporate, power-hungry, climb the ladder kind of people, and she really came across that way. Like, very well played.
What about you, Stabby?
I don't remember his name, but I thought he was a lot of fun, and I think he kind of gave a little comedy to the show. But the Japanese doctor that created
the former Japanese naval officer during World War II, he was hilarious. Yes.
Who created the gamma dispersal thing?
Yeah.
He was so much fun. He's like, it's working. He just added that perfect time comedy that the show needed to keep it from being just too serious about itself. He gave that little bit of comedy when you're just sitting there like, yeah.
Another unintentional, or maybe not, but another scene that was pretty good for the comedy angle was when Tim meets Kate for the first time in the airport, and he starts talking to her, and he comes off like he's creepy, I'm going to kidnap you vibe, and he starts talking to her when she's at the ATM, and he goes, oh yeah, this isn't helping my cause at all.
There's
some of those lines were great.
Yeah, there's some self-awareness there that was pretty good.
Yeah, it was just so funny. And since everybody is so hyper aware of talking to people across the genders these days, it fit right in with the timing, I thought, of when this is supposed to have been said. It was hilarious. So
I think the one character that we're all kind of I don't know if we're holding off on it or if we're just kind of beating around the bush till we get it, but he definitely is a character, and he has shown that is Godzilla himself.
Yeah.
He and I have to say this, the desert scene where he straight up looked at Kate and was like, I see you. I see you, and I'm gonna let you live, and then just kind of moves on. I was like, he recognized something in her. I don't know if it's from grandma or
That was my take on it.
but I was like, he's definitely coming into his own as being a character and showing that he does have more to him than just destroying a city.
Yeah, I like that. So we're going to dive back into that as part of the plot. But first, we're going to play that beautiful commercial. And we appreciate your patronage there, sir. And we're going to hit play.
Here comes your next romp in the graveyard. In Hunters for Hire, a new urban fantasy adventure by best-selling author Jonathan Yanez, a guy down on his luck puts sign twirling and rideshare driving on the back burner to track down the supernatural for a pretty penny. Find out what happens when John Hunter enters the secret underworld. Download your copy and start listening today. Now available on Amazon and Audible.
All right. Thank you for sticking with us through that commercial interlude. I still have flashback moments with that commercial. I'm not going to lie. When Jonathan had his narrator send that to us for the podcast, I was playing it while I was driving. So my mom and I were just sampling it together. And she goes, "Ooh, is he single?" I'm like, "Mom, you're married." And I've never been able to listen to that commercial the same way again. Still get the icks. Not going to lie. The ladies love the voice, though. So I guess that's something.
I love Mom so much. She's
All right. So
funny.
We've talked about the characters. Let's dive into the plot. I will say, we've not beat around the bush, but I was hooked from the first episode. I think everyone I've talked to said that first episode was free. It was like that crack. The first hit's free, and then boom, we're off to the races.
Yeah.
I mean, I signed up for an Apple subscription to watch the other 9 episodes.
That's exactly what I did.
Yeah, I signed up with Apple because I had a free 3-month trial with the purchase of a new iPad, and so I got hooked on Ted Lasso, and then I realized that Monarch was coming out, and I'm like, I've got to watch this. It looks too good. And
Yeah.
I was pleasantly surprised because I didn't it's one of those things where it's like when you try to serialize it or you put too much into the market, my thought was they're going to oversaturate because we're just a couple years out from Godzilla versus Kong. We've got the new Godzilla Kong movie coming out in just a month and a half. How is this going to saturate the market? And I don't think it does. And I think the plot is very good because it provides a nice entry point for people who aren't even casual fans of Godzilla and anything related to that media.
Okay. What about the rest of you guys? I thought like they did a good job of hooking you. I think the plot and the pacing and all of that was very well. Like it by going back and forth across the time, you were able to get rid of the dull points and just jump to the high points, which I like. So the story arc was pretty action packed, and it definitely was easy to follow. I don't really feel like it lagged anywhere, but does anybody else have anything?
Yeah, I think they did it right. Nothing felt drawn out or extended artificially for the story. I think they had enough of the subplots and twists and whatnot that you're continually wanting to watch the next episode just to find out.
Yeah.
Yeah, Nick, Stabby, did you guys have anything to add to the plot overall?
Sorry, I'm battling my computer right now. I think that it did a really good job kind of keeping you in the moment, because even when you even for split seconds when you feel like it's slowing down, like it's getting a little slow, then it's leading up to something. I think the perfect example is when all of the higher up butter bar soldiers are all sitting on the beach just waiting to, blow Godzilla to Kingdom Come. It really, like, you're just sitting there like, well, are they going to do it? Are they not going to do it? Like, is he going to show up? And then all heck breaks loose. So I definitely think that they kept a good pace through the whole series. There's not a single episode where I could think like, we could have done without that episode. They all kind of lead to something.
Yeah, as far as the scene where they're watching the explosion, that's not that far removed from how the military brass treated the first testings of the various bombing. So I don't think that's very far off. But yeah, it wasn't very far off. So I bought that. What about you, Nick?
No, there really wasn't a filler episode in that whole 10 episode arc. And what you're saying about like the old military testing, yeah, because they just sat on the beach and they put on their Earth, Wind, and Fire goggles, thinking that was going to protect them. And if you know anything about history and how those tests were done and the aftermath years later, the nuclear effects, you could almost like, man, that could be a spin-off too, but that would just be depressing.
I mean, if you think about it, even years later, they believe that's how John Wayne got his cancer, because the sand they used in the movie lot came from one of the testing sites. Now, I don't know if that's urban legend or not, but
I don't know. I'd have to do more research on it.
But I mean,
looking into.
Yeah, the radiation was no joke, and then they're playing in radiation because the monsters all operated in that radioactive space too. Some of them absorbing it, some of them causing it, because that's originally when you meet Kieko. I'm probably butchering all the Japanese names, so if you're from Japan and listening, we're sorry. You can mispronounce my name if you want to, if it makes you feel better. But yeah, they've got the Geiger counter and they're going around looking for the signals.
Yeah, they're using that as a like a tracking module, to see if those Titans were there. I think the plot was really awesome. It definitely hooks you in from the first episode. I think everybody here can agree that. And then it gets into the lore, that stuff that you had questions when you watched the movies. This fills the gap perfectly. It's like, oh, well, how did Monarch get started? Was it originally a government organization? Or what about Apex? So you had all these questions from the movies, and this thing just answers them perfectly. So if you weren't getting hit with action or cameos from some of your favorite kaijus, you were getting hit with information that was also filling the gap in between the movies. So I think it's well done. I can't wait for season 2.
Okay, well, JT, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, just the way that they used the nuclear testing at Bikini Atoll as a way of tying into the whole Godzilla story here, I think was great. It just really tied things together for the storyline. I thought it was well done.
Okay. All right. So next we're going to talk about the world building, which is basically, like we said in the beginning, it's how well fleshed out the world is. Did we buy it? Could we envision ourselves there? So world building would include some of the set props in this case. And I have to say, they clearly did not have a military advisor. Some of that stuff was just, but it wasn't so bad that it drew me out of the movie. Once I'm like, okay, JR, turn your brain off and just enjoy the monsters, I was able to go with it. So
yeah, when you tell yourself not to be that vet, where you're just like tearing down the uniform, like, oh my God, that metal wasn't even made yet. Like,
well, he's wearing a CIB, and I'm just thinking, well, he looks clearly too young to have been in World War II. He's chasing monsters for Korea. They have him wearing the CIB before we put forces in Vietnam. So when you know the history of that era and the wars we fought, like, how the hell did he earn a CIB? Where was he fighting? Who did he fight with? What official campaign was he participating in? And then they've got his ribbons switching around. So at one point in time, he's wearing 3 ribbons. One of them is clearly the Army Achievement Medal. Ribbon, excuse me, which they give you for completing basic training. It's the
thanks for coming ribbon.
Yep, thanks for coming. You finished boot camp, didn't get kicked out. Here you go, take a ribbon. And you watch that, and it's like one of the lower ranking ribbons. But then sometimes they just put it on backwards, so now it's the top ribbon, and it's just like, come on, people. I even paused, and I'm like going through the list of known campaign medals from World War II in Korea, trying to figure out how in the hell this guy earned a CIB. And then I'm like, you know what, JR, just stop, hit play, watch the rest of the damn movie.
You went deeper than I would have. I was like, oh, I got a CIB. It's probably from his encounters with Godzilla. Yeah, I would definitely count that as a combat action.
Okay, fair, but then do they give him a campaign ribbon for that? And if it's so classified he can't get a campaign ribbon, how is he able to wear the CIB for it? Because then that award would also thus be classified.
I don't know, maybe because it's GLG 20 classified, so like even asking questions, you're gonna get like jammed up about it. You know?
See, I went a little too deep on this stuff, but I can't help myself.
I understand that, like as a military guy, and I've done this to military movies, and I have to apologize if I watch it in front of like mixed company. It's like, oh, I'm sorry, that shit didn't exist yet. Like, I love Black Hawk Down. It's one of my favorite military movies, but the CCO that was on the M21 didn't exist in 1993. When the whole thing happened. So like people like, shut up, Nick. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm sorry. So I've gotten better at not doing that. I just take it for what they're showing me. All right. So this cat he started off with an EIB, like most infantry dudes do. You got a CIB somewhere. It happens. Maybe he has a friend in S1. And then he shows up with a Ranger tab, and I'm like, okay, well, historically, most infantry officers around Korea went to Ranger school, and then in Vietnam, they went through Ranger school for real in Vietnam. So there's a lot of things that like I was making excuses for it.
And I didn't even notice the Ranger tab, but it makes sense that you would.
Yeah, I just showed up like, oh man, he's got a little yellow and black crescent going on there.
I figured it out. When he was doing the war stuff to get his CIB and go to Ranger school to get the tab, that's when Bill made his move on Keiko. That's how it happened. There we go. We solved the mystery.
Yeah. And at that time, there was desert phase. There was 4 phases of Ranger school. So he had 4 months away for Bill to make his move.
Good job, Bill. You seized the initiative, sir. We are proud of you.
Attaboy. You get an honorary Ranger tab for that one.
So what about you, Karen? What did you think of the world building?
Just from a storytelling perspective, I thought it was really brilliant. Like the fact that, I mean, especially the modern day stuff, where in this post G-Day world, you have a super militarized version of Tokyo, Japan that we see in a lot of anime, especially in the aftermath of something like this. But like when they're pulling out of the airport and they're going into Tokyo proper, and Kate sees the missile launchers, I'm like, wow, especially considering the fact that Japan is not supposed to have any kind of formalized military at this point other than the Japan Defense Force. And so the fact that they've got these surface to air missiles, I'm assuming they're surface to air missiles because what else would you be firing at something that's 300 meters tall? Yeah. But I thought that was like, I see that scene, I'm like, wow, okay, that takes you into the realism of this post Godzilla appearance world, and especially considering the fact that the opening of that film does take place in Janjira, Japan, outside of Tokyo. It would make sense that they would really want to militarize and protect any local assets, especially considering the fact that the Mudos from that 2014 film were, at least one of them was feeding off of the reactor core of a nuclear power plant. But the rest of it I thought was pretty cool. The inclusion of different monsters. The star-nosed mole one was by far one of the most terrifying, just because it tracked heat signatures of various kinds, I mean, even the most minute, from like human body heat, which is nothing. It lit up like a road flare for that thing out in the Arctic, and just blew my mind that it's that, like, Godzilla feeds off of nuclear radiation. The Mudos are feeding off of nuclear radiation. We're not entirely sure what kind of radiation Kong feeds off of, if any, but this thing feeds off of thermal radiation. And I'm like, that is a cool little twist on that. And so
they added to the lore as far
as it really did.
Concerned. Yeah, because in the movies, everybody's fed off either interdimensional radiation or nuclear radiation.
Right.
You know, and then the series brings in that other element that we never even thought of, thermal radiation, which is a type of radiation.
Well,
To anybody who
it's
paid
not that
attention
it's
in eighth grade
unheard of.
science.
It's not that it's terribly unheard of, because if you go back and you look at 2019's King of the Monsters, Rodan is hanging out inside of a volcano feeding off of the geothermal radiation.
They
So
didn't
it's
really
there.
focus on it.
They don't focus on it, no, but I mean, it had to be feeding off of something to stay alive for that long in that domain.
No, you're absolutely right. And I think that's what I like about the series, is that it bridges the gaps between these films of all the questions that you kind of have when you're watching them, you know, without giving anything away. But most of these movies have been out for quite a time. So
one of the things that it did well is it covers like anything that some of the historic monster lore got wrong. Well, they just didn't know the science back then. So of course they got it wrong. And they just sort of not really hand wave it, because I mean, that's legitimate. If it was, you know, supposedly set in the 50s, well, the 50s understanding of science is not what it is today. And so they can kind of explain away by bringing the past and the present together in one story, how that evolved. And you see that with the Monarch organization, how they understood things. And, you know, the first time Bill Randa says they're teleporting, like, you're laughing at him. It's like, oh, it's this bad sci-fi. But then later, as they're learning, you know, you see more. And to clear up, when Garrett said earlier, he said MUTO, that's an acronym that stands for Massive Unidentified Terrestrial Organism. So if you haven't watched the show, that's the term they come up with for that. And the character in the show, Bill Randa, is the one that coined it, because he was a cryptozoologist. So he chases animals that we don't think exist yet as his profession. So what about you, JT, or what did you think of the world building?
The world building was really well done. What I like is that they have all of the material from the movies to pull from, so they're not just limiting themselves to a specific creature. They have so many to choose from that there's just a wide variety that they can throw in there, and they can throw additional plot lines and whatnot because of these different creatures, just like the ice ones not been seen before. And they addressed that in the show. And it became a pretty serious focal point later on, which is actually a really nice touch.
What about you, Stabby?
Honestly, I think they did a great job when it comes to the world building, and not just with the monsters or the cast, but the world in general. Like, when they're in the desert, you know that they're hot. Like, you can see the sweat dripping, you see the sweat rings on their clothes. When they're in the snow, you feel cold. You feel for them. You're watching the icicles build up on their facial hair, on their eyelashes and everything. And even when you see older Bill Randa, which you see him at the beginning, and he's on Kong Island, and he has the big, tropical spider coming after him. You see the trees, you see the foliage, blah, 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 blah. The foliage of that island. So everywhere they go, you feel like you're genuinely there. They make sure that when they're shooting San Francisco, you're seeing some of the major San Francisco areas, even though they're kind of destroyed. That you're there. So when it comes down to it, you're like, okay, a lot of this makes sense. And you feel for the characters. It gives you that empathy for the characters, because I know me, I hate being cold. So that whole entire episode where they're just freezing their butts off, I'm over here like pulling another blanket up.
Sympathy blanket.
Yeah, like I'm trying to warm up for them. But I was also raised in Las Vegas, so when they're out in the dunes, I'm like, oh my God, I know you guys are sweating. I know.
Only one of the other nitpicks I had with the world building was the scene or the episode where they're chasing the dragon, which you see the USS Lawton in the jungle. I thought that was really cool. The reveal that Bill served on it, and he was the only survivor of a shipwreck. And you know what's involved. Like, if you've studied the Indianapolis when it went down, and you hear the horror stories of the Asiatic shipwrecks and what those people survived with the sharks and they're just normal fish, not even talking about titans. Like, man, that guy was a tough son of a somebody back in his youth, right? So I thought that was a cool addition to the character, because now he's not just an egghead. And you see that with Leland calling him Swabby all the time, like, all right, Swabby, which was also playing on the Army-Navy rivalry, which I liked. But the nitpick is when they go in and explore and he goes to where his bunk is and everything is rusted and covered with all the grime and whatever, but somehow his footlocker is clean, everything in it's dry, his hat for the White Sox is perfectly white. I'm like, no, I live near the water. I know exactly what stuff that comes out of the drink looks like, and it doesn't look like that.
I think the thing that kind of I really enjoyed about seeing Bill Rudd at the beginning, you know, throwing his information out into the water, just begging the universe to let somebody find it, was like, they never really explicitly said in Kong Skull Island that he died. You just have the assumption that he died. You don't actually know that he died. And so seeing him at the beginning, I was like, no way.
And you'll recognize the actor. Like, I recognize him even though I couldn't place it. And Stabby is the one who searches all that. And she's like, yeah, that's the guy that was the husband in Roseanne. I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, John Goodman.
Yeah.
King Ralph.
So
it was just too much.
Ralph at the deep cut.
It was too much fun. And you guys know me, I'm a completionist. Like, if I start a series, I need to finish it, and then I need to watch all the movies that go with it. Well, I already loved all the movies. I have a thing for kaiju as it is, and that's how I see Godzilla and King Kong and all of the Monarch creatures, is I see them as kaiju. And seeing John Goodman at the beginning of that first episode, and you can see the emotion in him, the prayers, like, please God, somebody find my information, somebody get this, as he, you know, just tosses it out there. You're just kind of like, well, that explains a lot.
Yeah. So now we're going to talk about the cinematography. And before we actually talk about it, just to give you some examples, Nick, you've got some of the scenes, little segments, and every scene we use, we'll link in the show notes, but we're also linking to where you can watch the movie live, just because we don't want you to think we're copywriting infringing anything. One, fair use, and two, we're encouraging you to watch the whole damn thing. It's 10 hours of glorious goodness.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
All right, Nick, can you show us the ones you keyed up?
1 second, kids. Oh my God.
I love that scene.
His roar is so iconic.
We didn't kill it. Jesus Christ, we didn't kill it.
That was a thank God moment if I ever saw it.
I love the juxtaposition between those two characters and how they react to seeing Godzilla alive.
Yeah, she's like giddy about it, and he's like, holy crap, if our
she was like super stoked, and like he looked so much like his dad.
Yeah.
In that scene.
And the thing I liked about it is that, because if you go back to the scene where they do try to nuke Godzilla, you know, he's holding her off, trying to prevent her from stopping the countdown or stopping the triggering of that nuclear test. And she is just overrun with grief at the fact that they tried to kill something so majestic as Godzilla. And because she sees the value in Godzilla as just another creature on this planet. And you know, and Shaw's just like, look, we had a job to do. You know, he's being the dutiful soldier. Now, like, she, you know, her response is like, yes, he's not dead. Thank God, my prayers have been answered. And Lee's like, oh, darn it.
And if you think
she
about it,
had been carrying some guilt since
Oh, yeah.
you know they tried to nuke Godzilla, and so like, the relief is genuine.
If you understand the history, the implication is more so because think about it. She's old enough. She would have lived in Japan during World War II when Nagasaki
and Hiroshima.
There we go. brain damage moment. But when they dropped the 2 A bombs on Japan,
Yeah.
you know, even if they weren't in the cities where it happened, it affected the whole country. And I imagine that changes her willingness to see bombs like that used again, and too, just to, you know, needlessly kill anything, you know, outside of the takes on the war, because I don't think they kind of avoid that the morality of the war, and they just talk about the after effect. And you see
Her
that
husband killed in one of the bombings.
no, they just said her husband died, and she was a widow. The implication was he died in the imperial military, because they used that against her later.
Yeah.
Like she was a suspicious character, but they don't explicitly say how he died, just that he died.
I think when it comes to their reactions to him still being alive, hers is thank God. Thank God he's still alive. Thank God we didn't kill him. But I think his was more,
oh shit.
I think we pissed him off.
Yeah.
Because if that didn't kill him, he's going to be mad.
And what could potentially, you know, stop him from decimating just about any major city on the planet?
Yeah, because we just dropped our best weapon on him, and he shook it off.
So, do you have thoughts on this, JT?
Well, the one thing that I like is the way that they make her distinct from other scientists in the trope, where they're actually stepping her outside of that logical, analytical, technical mindset and showing that she actually has compassion for this creature.
Yeah.
And Keiko's she's also more emotionally driven. You know, kind of spitballing off of what JT was just saying, is that most scientists get into that analytical mode. That's all they're thinking about. They're not thinking about the emotional impact of something that's going to happen. I mean, switching franchises, but you look at the original Jurassic Park, and all the scientists that are talking and giving their opinion about the park, you've got a mathematician, you've got 2 paleontologists, and the only one who sees the value that this could possibly be a good thing is the lawyer, at least in the film. Whereas, you know, whereas the emotions are there for, like, say, a character like Ian Malcolm, but you look at how Sattler and Grant approach their argument, it's all logic based, it's all evidence based. That, you know, there's no emotionality to it. And for Keiko as a character in this universe, this monsterverse, if you will, she is very, very much in line with both sides. Like, she can think on her feet. She can, she's very logical, very analytical, but at the same time, she understands the value and the balance of the emotionality of something happening. And maybe that's it's good writing for a character, but it also plays on the idea that this is a woman who is not from the Western world. She is from Japan, where culturally they try to find as much balance in every aspect of their life as they possibly can, which is interesting, considering the fact that you have Hiro, who is who walks that fine line of dichotomy between the Western world and his Japanese heritage. And which is why he's got a foot in both worlds, with a family in San Francisco, a family over in Japan. And then, I mean, just the way that it's presented on film is really well done.
No, they pulled it off perfectly, because I watched it a little bit different than even Nick did. My son is actually part Japanese, and knowing his grandmother, who is much more Japanese than my son is, and being around her so much and seeing how she was versus how I was, and the things that she was teaching me, it definitely, they portrayed it very well in this show, because something as simple as I was not okay with a brown recluse being in my house, and my intention was to kill it because it is a brown recluse inside my house.
This is the way.
And it needs to die. She was like, no, hold on. And she went and got a jar, caught the freaking spider, took it out to the desert and released it. And I was not okay.
Anyone who's had cellulitis once from a brown recluse bite, nope, you kill it.
You kill it. You burn the house down.
With fire if necessary.
Just in case its babies are in the house.
I don't kill spiders in the house. I capture and re-release them somewhere else.
But watching this show and watching her reaction to them nuking Godzilla, to her realizing that that he was still alive and everything, it reminded me so much of my ex-mother-in-law, that's how she really was. And I was like, they really did a good job at nailing her reactions to things.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that the first reaction gave you the idea that she understands that Godzilla is more than a specimen, and that the second reaction reinforces that.
So I know you've got school duties with your young kid Garrett, and you're going to have to bounce in just a second. So can you tell, because we're going to probably go a few more minutes after that, but can you tell listeners and viewers, and they'll be in the show notes, people, where they can find you and what you're working on right now?
Yeah, so you can find me on Instagram and X at GKJ_publishing, where I talk about my books. I try to promote them as much as I possibly can. I'm terrible with marketing, like a lot of authors. But I also do my show on YouTube. Go on YouTube, search for GKJ Publishing. I'm the only one with that handle, and you'll see my show The Right Way. I'm in the middle of season 6. I'm getting ready to put out the February episode and live stream in the next couple of weeks. And so been doing really well with that. And then, as far as War of the Stars, which is my Star Wars podcast, just go on to geeknewsnow.net and look for their podcast listings, and you'll find it, or you can find us on Podbean. So it's geeknewsnow.podbean.com. And like JR said, all of my information is going to be down in the description. And I do have a website as well, archivesofthefivekingdoms.com. It works as both a kind of an understanding of what I'm doing with my work, what I'm working on currently, and then acts as a companion site for the book, so that if you want to look up maps, character profiles, location descriptions, any of the special words and glossaries that are for each of the books, they're all there available for free.
Outstanding. All right. Well, now we're going to show the next scene, and then if you have to bounce, we understand. But it gets that out of the way. But we're glad you did come because it was fun.
Yeah, it's been a blast.
All right, Nick. That was a very moving scene. I liked it.
That scene.
He is absolutely a character. You can see it the way his eye dilates when he looks at her. He's like, you are not my enemy, but those people in that helicopter might be.
I know he didn't even go after the people in the helicopter. They bumped into him when he stood up, and their rotors hit his spikes on his back.
That fool was out to find a new napping spot because that's what he was doing.
Yep, I agree.
You know, and
the helicopter was
incidental.
incidental.
You see Godzilla in an environment outside of the ocean, or in a cityscape where he's destroying shit.
Yeah, I was going to say also outside of a city.
Yeah.
I thought that was really cool. It adds to the lore. I got goosebumps watching it. You know, it's like Godzilla in the desert. What?
Yeah.
Imagine you might have goosebumps when a mountain stands up.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I stand by what I said earlier. He is absolutely a character. There's, we all know me. I'm the queen of horror. I watch all of the different types of horror, from psychological to monsters, and a lot of times a monster is just a monster. It's just an enemy in the way. It's that immovable thing that needs to be moved. But he looked straight at her, and his eye dilated, and he was just, and then he huffed, because when he huffed, the sand came out of his nostrils. And you just see it. He is absolutely a character. There's absolutely a soul in there. You can see it. He is a character.
Yeah. I kind of agree with it. It was kind of majestic to see him standing up and then the desert sort of falling away.
Dude was just looking for a nap.
I was kind of surprised when they slid to a stop and all of the rocks that were behind them also stopped so that they didn't get, crushed by them. It was just kind of odd.
What? I think it just kind of adds to the lore they're trying to build, that Godzilla is not a mindless monster. He's just not out to wreak havoc and cause damage. That he's an enduring character. It's something that you can kind of relate to. They're poisoning him to be the protector of humanity. It's like we're his pets. And I'd do anything for my dog, so I get it.
He was sunbathing like Domino.
Yeah. So yeah, I got a Boston Terrier that likes to bathe out in the rocks in our front yard. I get it. Like Godzilla, I agree with you, man. Sometimes it just feels good to lay out on the sand and just get your heat on and take a nap.
Although I will say I was pretty impressed by the Yamaha, just stand it up and drive it off after rolling down a mountain.
Impressive craftsmanship on that vehicle, yes.
So fun fact is vehicles that roll down sand dunes don't get as messed up as you think they would. Because going to the dunes is a big thing when you're raised in Vegas. You get out of the city, you go play in the dunes.
I was in a few dune buggies as a youth in Southern California in Glamis, going up there, and from sand is a lot more forgiving than hard rock.
Yes.
Okay. All right. We had two more of the before we start the wrap up, we had two more of the scenes to show?
Well, I got one more.
Okay.
Actually. That's the only one I got queued up. Hold on. Give me just one of your patient seconds and I'll bring this up, because there we go. And this clip, we'll just kind of segue into it. Give it a little.
I think you're here for me.
Yeah, it shows the beginning of the relationship between Keiko and Shaw. So let's get into it.
Here for me.
Wish I could say I was, but I'm here on army business.
That shows the
Maybe we
cultural
can get a drink on my way out, huh?
zeitgeist of the 50s.
Wait a minute. They told me they were sending a military escort, and you're the only one here in uniform.
I'm supposed to meet a Dr. Mura.
I'm Keiko Miura.
Keiko, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet
So
you.
you must be his daughter? I'm sorry, I think there's a little miscommunication happening here. Let's start over.
Yes, why don't we?
Okay.
You are.
I am Lieutenant Leland Lafayette Shaw III, but you can call me Lee.
I'm Keiko Miura, and you may call me Dr. Miura. I think you
Yeah, I think I love that scene so much, because he knows he's putting his foot in his mouth, and he's like, I think there's a miscommunication here. Let's start over.
And it wasn't even so much that he assumed that a woman couldn't be a doctor, but you just think scientists, you think old dude, right? Like there's just, if it had been a young man, I bet his reaction would have been the same.
Well, you got to think about the era of the time that it's set. It's in the 50s, because I think that was 52, 53.
I think so.
maybe later 50s. But
even today, I think older when I think scientist. I wouldn't see a 19-year-old somebody and assume doctor. And she's not 19, but you get what I'm saying. Like, she looked young.
yeah, to be a doctor, and in that time, let's say it was even the later 50s, it was very unheard of for a female to be a doctor, according to the West. I don't know much about Japanese history, but I would assume even there, a very patriarchal type society.
They lost so many men in the war. I wonder if they had to loosen it up, even if just temporarily, to fill the vacancies.
And I think you're right, because there was a lot going on in the United States at the same time, the same way, where we had,
Rosie the Riveter went to work,
Riveter,
come home,
and you had females having to. Well, you got the All-American Female Baseball League, during the same time. So there was a lot of women that were stepping up to do men's roles, or conventionally men's roles at the time.
Don't say enough
in the war.
1950.
Right, but a lot of those were the physical labor, like the manual labor type stuff. When you get to the intellectual sciences and whatnot, it was still not that common to have a woman take that up during that time period. There were a few for sure. I mean, we had one that wrote a bunch of the code for the space shuttle or the lander module. I forget which one, for our trip to the moon.
What was that movie called?
Which Hidden Figures.
Hidden Figures, yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
And that crossed a lot of barriers.
A lot of barriers.
That weren't common at the time. First, you had African American and female,
and NASA.
One of the Hidden
groundbreaking
Figures,
mathematics.
What are they?
Wasn't that in the 60s though?
Yeah, it was in the 60s.
Yeah, so it was a little bit later.
You got to think though, like we didn't start doing
calculators.
equality until the late 70s or the 80s.
Right.
Amongst the sections.
I mean, they still do it to us now. Like when me and Nick go out, if we separate, for some reason, chicks like to tell him how beautiful his eyes are. And you would think in a heartbeat that it would be, his shirt show off his muscles, but he'll immediately go, "My wife is crazy."
No, I say
in their defense, he does have some dream-worthy eyes.
No, he really does, and I completely understand it. But he never takes he's the calm one in those situations, and he's like, "My wife's crazy; she'll stab you."
Hold on, Nick.
And he does this.
Stabby, hold on, Nick. Stare into the camera. Let us see.
We need some screen caps.
I'm gonna end up a meme again.
All right. So
and it's still the same. What I was saying though is it's still the same. Like even now in 2024, there's still that stigmatism that the man's going to be the strong type. The man is going to be, that person. But he'll do it even like at work. He's like, my wife is crazy. He told the nurses when he was in the hospital after his stroke. He's like, "You obviously haven't met my wife yet."
So yeah, so like I said, I think we've covered that. The cool thing is that with the Hidden Figures one of the females in that movie that's based on real life is actually from Hampton, Virginia. So they had an exhibit to her when they did the anniversary of that at the Hampton Air and Space Museum. And I got to take my kids to see that. And they sell merch from the movie because she was local to that area, which is kind of cool. And there's a British fish and chips place that's right near that museum. So I was able to try biscuits, cookies for us normal people, and their weird warm beer. No, beer should be cold. I'm sorry, fight me. I'll die on that hill.
The colder, the better.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So was there anything else about the cinematography other than what we've already said? I think we kind of covered it a lot with this already.
One thing that I'll say is I appreciate the action scenes where things are breaking apart and shaking around and falling around, where the camera doesn't feel like it's mounted to a four-wheeler with the suspension of a 2x4.
Yeah.
it kept everything nice and easily viewable without trying to make you sick.
Yeah, I don't like it when movies go full Blair Witch Project because it just makes me dizzy, and then I'm like, I can't watch this.
I think
Absolutely.
one of the best shot scenes, and I pouted when we saw it earlier, so it's not a spoiler. We already have video of it. But I think one of the best shot scenes was when Shaw's pilot friend Duho. When he gets frozen, and it captures the monsters sucking the heat out of the air so perfectly, because it starts at the back end of the plane and you watch it creep forward up his body and then out of his face. Like, it did it so perfectly. And
you know
so
why that works so well? Because the actor's ability to show that, oh crap, I see what's happening, oh shit, right at the last moment, and then it was over for him. Like that oh shit expression on his face. Because he was, for most of the show, like most of the episode he was in, he was pretty, like, he didn't show a lot of expression. You kind of that traditional stoicism that, men of a certain era were taught is the face you present to society. So to see that change where suddenly it's like, oh shit. And they did it also when you see Shaw flying and he's like, just buckle in because this is the crazy guy when it comes to the piloting. But for me, the best on the cinematography was when they showed them leaving the USS Lawton when it's rolling over and crashing on them. And they're just running from the ship and you sort of pan out and you show that scene. That was one of the best shot scenes, I think, in the whole 10 episodes.
There's just so many good ones. And the one thing I will say about the cinematography is, as much as you want to pay attention to the characters, you want to pay attention to what's right in front of your face. If you watch the background, just a little bit, there are just little things that they add in there. They paid such good attention to detail that even in the background,
a perfect example of that is when they're at the dance scene in 1955, where Leland is a captain now. This is where he's suddenly wearing the CIB that we talked about earlier. He's dancing with Keiko. Most of these guys are senior officers who would have fought in World War II. A lot of naval officers, they would have fought in the Asiatic. And they have the wives and even the officers like sniffing at him as he's dancing with this Japanese woman, and the facial expressions in the background that I almost didn't miss. I mean, you almost don't catch, but then when you catch it, like, that is such a fine touch that you wouldn't think about to show that subtle disdain for this American officer dancing with the former enemy. That I thought was a nice touch.
I mean, even watching the other episodes, you see that they're paying attention to the little things, like the cab drivers in Japan with the gloves. I mean, that's something not a lot of people know about.
Is that real?
Yes. They're absolutely very proud of how clean their cabs are, and that's why the gloves are white.
Okay. I just, when I heard the cab driver and he was like, I've got a podcast in the San Francisco, I laughed there because, I'm like, sweet, so do I. And he starts talking about his conspiracy theories, and I'm like, oh, okay. I see how it is.
Well,
we're not all Joe Rogan,
Even in some of the San Francisco scenes, like if you've ever visited San Francisco, not even just lived there, but visited, as they're wandering through the quarantine zone, you're noticing little things like they pass like a little Chinese restaurant and you see the hooks in the window. And if you go through San Francisco, they hang Peking ducks from the window on those hooks. And chickens. So as they're like wandering through the quarantine zone, you see that, and it's a split second, but you see the little hooks hanging, and there used to be ducks or chickens hanging from the window there. It's just little things to make you understand that you are in San Francisco.
Yeah, I like it. So the attention to detail was definitely something they had going.
It was definitely there. Yes.
Now I'm going to show this movie poster so we can say what we think. Let me share that screen. All right, and live. So this is the movie poster, and obviously you see the Russells, Kurt and Wyatt, make the cut, and you've got Godzilla in the background, and then all of the characters. And I think it definitely encapsulates the feel of the show. I think you couldn't ask for better. I mean, at this point, they're not so much movie posters as they are, screen grabs to put on ads, because nobody prints posters anymore, I don't think. But it's still, as far as it goes, I think it does a good job of showing you what you're going to get. And you see the Golden Gate Bridge in the background. Here, let me zoom in. You can see it right in here.
Well, there's actually something else to notice here as well.
What's that?
All the characters from the past timeline are on the left, and all the ones on the current and future are on the right.
Yeah, they did a good job, because most people from Western audiences read left to right. So the poster is set up directly to show you the timeline.
I didn't even touch that, but you're right.
And Godzilla's just there.
He's in the background because he's not a main character. He's a
He's a unifying character.
A unifying character, a linking character. So they put him in the background, and it also, you put the Golden Gate Bridge there, so that takes you back to the movie in 2014, which is set in 2015. The only thing I would have added was the halo jumpers with the smoke tied to their legs. That's the only thing I would have added.
What are you talking about?
As a poster, it's beautiful.
What do you mean the halo jumpers?
If you watch the 2014 film, they send out a SOCOM team that do a halo jump out of a C-130, and they have red smoke strapped to their ankle, which is, anybody's ever done a halo jump, you don't want to do that unless it's really far off your body. Otherwise, it's going to burn.
Okay.
But they did that, and it was a really cool scene. So if you've never seen the 2014 Godzilla, go and check it out, because it's a really intense scene, because their whole mission was to land on Godzilla,
Okay. So, but yeah, overall, I like the poster. Sounds like everyone else did too. JT, the win for noticing the left to right thing. Good job. Attention to detail. See what I'm saying? Like these people didn't leave the little details like you sometimes see with the plot holes and the like, what the hell were they thinking moments? Like these are clearly people that love the source material and honored the source material. As opposed to like what Star Wars is doing now, where it seems like everyone writing for them hates Star Wars.
Don't
at best, never read it. At worst, I don't know I don't actually know which is worse. But anyway, we'll move on. So yeah, I like the attention to detail that you saw. So, all right, if nobody has anything else to add, we're going to talk what we thought overall. So JT, you're the last man standing on our guest count. So what did you think of the show overall?
I loved it. I'm really looking forward to more. I think they did a great job at the storytelling, world building, everything, and especially the set design. That was just top notch.
Yeah,
really brought the story to life.
And I definitely wanted to explore like the ruins of San Francisco.
Yeah,
because like I'm the kind of guy that, like, when my dad would go to the junkyard, I'd go with him, not because I was interested in pulling whatever random part he wanted off the car. I would explore the other cars to see what, like, just the history of the people who had dropped that car off, what they left, because sometimes you get the pictures, cassettes, letters, whatever. Like for me, it was just the exploring. And so I see that city and I'm like, oh.
Yeah, there's a lot of room for storytelling in those ruins.
Yes, there is. I remember tweeting when I was watching it that I don't believe any government cares about its citizens enough that they would go that hardcore to prevent people in the abandoned city. And Garrett on Twitter pointed out, and if you don't follow us on Twitter, we share all of the best memes, and sometimes we talk sci-fi and fantasy. And I steal most of my memes shamelessly. So, if yours are missing, check our Twitter.
You're welcome, JR.
I steal from Stabby, from Nick, from everyone else. There's a bunch of veterans in a military meme group. I steal from them too.
That's why I post it first and then I send it to you.
I shared what she shared to me before she could share it. It's like, JR, I was going to share that on my Twitter first. But anyway, but he was pointing out that he actually thought the soldiers keeping people out of the ruins were Monarch soldiers. And since they don't seem like they have ulterior motives and everything, okay, I could believe there was a different reason they wanted everyone out.
I'll have to go back and watch the episode where you get kind of a close-up of their arms and see if they're wearing Monarch bands.
I couldn't tell. It looked like it, but I just noticed the soldier had a beard, and I'm like, holy hell, my army has fallen. And I was like making a joke about the beard, and that's where he was like, no, I think they were Monarch soldiers. So I don't know.
Yeah, you can tell they're all PMCs.
Yeah.
So if you ever watch like Pacific Rim Uprising, there's some correlations there about the companies having interest in anything having to do with a kaiju. You know, they in the Pacific Rim movies, they use the blood, the bones, the brains. They use all that stuff to make a myriad of different products. You know, so why would that not exist in this universe also?
And I like that they had the whole economy around paying scavengers to be official scavengers to go into the city to like your loved ones, like you go to my apartment, and I'm like, and she pointed out people aren't asking for like, finding all this gold or loot I left, money, whatever. Like, no, they want the
bring me a picture of my family,
like the
at
picture of my
937 10th Street.
Yeah. Which I thought that fit, like that really hit like, the emotional feels right. And then when Kintaro, he just walks by one of the bodegas that's, the walls, and he just grabs a bag of chips from it. And she's like, no looting. They shoot looters, is what his sister tells him. And he goes, I'm eating the evidence. It's okay.
And it's
the
funny.
bag of chips.
As I was watching that scene and they were kind of explaining that, like, we don't go in for gold and stuff, we go in for memories, it kind of struck home for me because I constantly tell my son, I tell him, I'm like, dude, pay attention to your stuffed rabbit, Thumper. I'm like, keep an eye on him, put him up on a shelf or something so the dogs don't eat him, because I've already paid for him 3 times. And he's always like, 3 times? I'm like, you've lost it in 2 different stores where they didn't know if it was theirs or ours, and then made me rebuy it. I have bought that bunny 3 times. Don't lose that bunny. Don't let it get chewed up. That's your bunny. So, like, when it comes down to it, as much as I'd like to think that I'd go for the Star Wars memorabilia in the living room or, something in the office, I'm like, yeah, no, I'd probably go get the dang bunny.
No, let's be real. Nick would be wrestling. Let's be real. Nick would be wrestling Godzilla to give you time to empty all the Star Wars loot. He's like, hold on, honey, I got this. And then you'd have time to move the moving truck.
Yeah, with the armory I have, I'll do the best I can with what I got.
So,
my shit.
If you see our office, we are mid-packing. And it takes a total of 13 large-size Home Depot boxes, 12 medium Home Depot boxes, and I believe it was 15 small boxes to box up the Star Wars living room. And that does not include the lightsabers, which are still on the walls until they go into the backseat of my car.
God, it makes
Now
it
you're
sound
just bragging.
obsessed.
And that's just the living room.
So overall, though, I thought the attention to detail was good. I really loved it. It hooked me from episode 1. I thought I just watched a couple episodes yesterday, a couple episodes today. I watched all night. I didn't leave the desk chair because I watched it on my desktop. So because I didn't know I could hook it up to the Xbox to watch it. I mean, my legs were not liking that I sat still for so long, but it was totally worth it.
I feel your pain.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm going to cancel my membership and just resubscribe for season 2, but it was definitely worth the $9 to watch all 10 hours. You can't beat that.
I think my last text message from you was at almost 2 a.m.
Yeah, I kept watching, and it was 5 a.m. when I went to bed. I was hating life this morning when my kid with insomnia waked me up. Yeah, I was just like, oh, I love you, kid, but can you let me sleep for 5 more minutes? But no, it was good. It was good. I definitely felt it, though, when I was walking around Sam's Club today. I was like, oh, I should have stretched my legs out while I was like intermission for each of these episodes.
Oh, my Lord.
But I definitely loved it. It's 10 out of 10 for me, 5 out of 5, whatever. It gets all the grenades. Explosive good time. What about you, JT? How are you going to throw this one overall?
It's definitely a 5 out of 5.
Outstanding. Stabby, you've already rated it. I'm guessing it's a 5 out of 5 for you too?
5 knives.
Okay.
5 knives.
Now, you've had time to think about this, Nick. Let's see if you can Joe Bob this one out.
All right. Oh, sorry. My knee got stuck on my desk because stroke.
Old.
My old. My left leg doesn't want to work when I tell it to work. So let's see here. Let's do the old rundown. Let's do the counter. 35 dead humans. 15 kaijus. One frozen Asian dude in a plane. No nudity. No breasts. I give it a 5 Sisk Thyborn daggers up. Going with the Ranger tradition here, and since Mr. Leland Shaw apparently has a Ranger tab, I'm going to give him that credit. But I thought it was a great show through and through. Hooked from the first episode, like we've all talked about. Kept building on. It kept going back and forth and filling in some questions that you had if you seen the movies. But it also it explained enough where you didn't have to see the movies to be involved in the show. It took everybody's hand, and that's what I love about it. It's like, hey, take my hand. I'm going to run you through this really cool adventure, and I loved it. I can't wait for season 2. I have my theories that Leland Shaw survived his little episode. I can't wait to see what they're going to do with Khan. I can't wait to. I want to see if they're going to do the same thing with Apex that they did with Monarch, and how Apex became its little entity within the universe. Because now we have an opposing entity, to Monarch, a conglomerate, for-profit type thing. So I love this show through and through, and it's really rare that we find shows that we just love right off the bat. So I'm looking forward to the future. I can't wait. If I could draw a kaiju, I would. It's an inspiring movie or series, and they got the best actors to do the roles that they were assigned, and they did a great job, and it made me care for all of them. And I hope Leland Shaw survives into the future, where they start paralleling the other movies with it, because that's the thing that I'm kind of like in the back of my mind. I'm like, well, these guys didn't show up in the other movies. Where did they perish? How come they're no longer involved? So I hope the second season, hopefully a third season, or however it continues, answers those questions. Hopefully they just don't kill them off.
Okay. And with that being said, it's time to wrap this puppy up. JT, what are you writing now?
Let's see. Still working on the Bane short story, and a little bit of progress on the novel, but not much, just due to time constraints. So I've got a science fiction novel I'm working on that I'm hoping to pan out into a longer series, as well as a few other short stories. I've got some submissions out, waiting to hear back on those.
Cool. All right. And how can listeners find you? And as usual, all of this will be in the film.
On my Facebook page, you can just search by my name. I'm also on Twitter, and then my website is just jtrl.com.
Outstanding. So you make it easy for us, and I will just throw all those links in the show notes, so you don't have to work too hard, people. Just click the open show notes button, and you can stalk to your heart's content. Because we like
this is our middle name.
That's right. All right. You can find us on our Linktree, linktr.ee, Linktree/Blasters and Blades podcast. Again, Linktree/Blasters and Blades podcast, where we link to all the things, the BitChutes, the Rumbles, the YouTubes, the Twitters, the email, Blasters and Blades podcast @gmail.com for professional purposes only. We have our Facebook group and our new Facebook page. We have Madam Stabby Stab's Instagram, Twitter, and email, so you can send all the hate mail. She's here for it, and twice on Sundays. We have our website at anchor.fm/blasters-blades. Again, anchor.fm/blasters-blades, where for as little as 99 cents a month, you can help keep the lights on. These shows aren't free to produce, and we appreciate your patronage. And you can support the show more directly at buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Again, buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Be sure to put in the comment section that it is for the podcast, and I promise I will keep my co-hosts duly caffeinated. They will drink the Java or tea or hot cocoa from Coffee Brand Coffee until they can swim in it. That is the goal. Well, they won't really swim in it. They'd drink it before they could make that much, but, whatevs. Boy can drink.
Oh, you fill up an Olympic-sized pool of this stuff. I'll drink and swim.
There you go. We've got plans, people. We've got goals. And with that being said, Podcast Grunts is the code. Links in the show notes. And thank you for spending some of your precious time with us. For my crazy co-hosts, I am J.R. Handley, and this was the Blasters and Blades podcast. We'll be back next week at the same time, where we'll indulge our love of nerd culture, cheesy jokes, and all things that go boom. If you haven't figured out they've timed this one down, because my pacing is just predictable, I don't know. Well, I guess if you're not watching, you don't see all the hand and eye motions that I'm getting from Stabby and Nick. They're doing the sing-along version at home, lip-syncing karaoke style. There you go. All right, JT, thank you for coming. We appreciate your time as usual. You're going to have you come back yet again. This was a blast. And with that being said,
I had a great time.
Boom. Wait for it.